Cześć! Jeśli lubisz rozmowy Juliusza i Huberta o akupunkturze, mam do Ciebie małą prośbę. Zostaw im ocenę i recenzję. Twoja opinia pomaga rozwijać ten podcast i docierać do większej liczby osób, które tak jak Ty szukają naturalnych metod zdrowia i harmonii.
Dobry wieczór. Juliusz Sury, Akubajki, odcinek kolejny. Dzisiaj ze mną więcej osób.
Hubert Kubica.
Jonathan Shubs.
Jonathana poznaliście w naszym krótkim wcześniejszym filmiku, który był wstawką przygotowanym do kursu. Dzisiaj znowu się widzimy z Jonathanem w Polsce. Zobaczymy, o czym porozmawiamy, ale myślę, że nawiążemy do tematu, który już dzisiaj poruszaliśmy rano przy śniadaniu, więc przerzucamy się na angielski i zobaczymy, co z tego wyjdzie. Hello, sir.
Hello, gentlemen.
Yeah, we know you as a philosopher and master Jedi.
Okay.
So today, during the breakfast, we're talking about world of the ghosts. We're talking about the concept of the ghosts. Of course, we are in Poland, in a Christian country. So, what is the approach of Chinese medicine compared to Christian approach about ghosts, demons, hungry ghosts, all those stuff?
Okay. So first, I probably won't say that I'm going to talk on behalf of all of Chinese medicine. But I can talk on behalf of my perception and how I navigate it.
Yes.
Okay.
It's your story.
I just want to put that out there. So yes, in Chinese medicine we have this idea of ghosts. And when we think about ghosts here in the West, most of us think of entities of people who have passed on. I think
Continue.
that probably the indication of ghost is much more general coming from Chinese medicine, where it's about any type of spirit or entity that is not physically manifested in our material world. So this could be the idea of a person who passed on, but it can also be an invitation to the animate universe in which we live, where as opposed to us being focused on the individualism of this is me, that is you, it is the relationship between the two of us. That's where the animate happens. That's where the ghost is. That's where the spirit of our conversation comes up. So we often talk about this idea of ghosts possessing. And I would invite us to, and then we were talking and you said, well, is that a demon? Well, if we're going to take the Christian idea of demon, of being a spirit coming from the devil, I would say, well, that's a too literal translation in our minds.
Okay.
Whereas for me, the idea of the ghosts these are spirits. And if we're going to take a Buddhist idea, perhaps the ghosts that are attached to the human or we become possessed by they are hungry ghosts, meaning that they need to be fed. So the invitation wouldn't be that we want to get rid of them. It would be, instead of feeding them with our emotions and our ideas, is to honor them and feed them as they are. And then they won't need to to possess those parts of us to feed themselves.
Okay. So they are not bad?
Yeah, I don't think that there is an idea of good and bad in this world.
Okay, that's good.
Nor bad.
Okay. That's interesting.
But we live in this, dualistic version of good and bad, it is part of our reality. So it's not to move away from that, but to name a ghost good or bad, I think we're missing the point. There's a story. This is just to give this idea of why we shouldn't say something is good or bad. So it's the story of a farmer who wins a new horse, a beautiful new horse. And the rest of the village comes up and goes, "Oh, you're so lucky, how wonderful it is for you." And he goes, "We'll see." So the next day, his oldest son is on the horse, riding it, enjoying himself, and he falls off and he breaks his leg. So they take him into the hut and to the healer, and the healer's fixing him. And all the village says to the old man, "Oh, what bad luck you have." The old man says, "We'll see." 2 days later, the army comes through the village, and they're looking for all boys between 12 and 20 to come fight in the war. But because his son has the broken leg, he's not taken. And then all the village looks at him and says, "Oh, you're so lucky." And the old man says, "We'll see." So this idea of good and bad, we'll see.
It depends.
It depends.
It not even depends. We'll see.
It's when we attach meaning, we say that this is good or this is bad, then we're stuck in that.
We are limited.
Exactly. But he went from having good fortune to bad fortune to good fortune to bad fortune without attaching to it. And it wasn't trying to limit it. So maybe that's the same idea when somebody gets any type of affection, whether it be a possession, or we can go to more simple ideas like pain, or functional problems, digestive problems, or gynecological problems, or any of the different aspects that they might experience in their life. What would it be like to ask the question, what is being asked of me by this happening? As opposed to saying I need to get rid of it, or it's wrong, and that's, I think, the invitation is whether it's ghosts or pain or whatever, is to have a different relationship to what we're experiencing.
It's a lesson of how do you see it?
So, I love some science fiction books and movies, and one of my favorite ones is the Dune series.
Yes, good one.
And there's an excellent statement in it, is, "This is not a problem to be solved, but a happening to be experienced."
Good one.
And that would be my response to it, is that
This is the way.
this is the way.
I have spoken. I have spoken.
Right? It's quite, on a personal note, I've been working with inflamed Achilles tendon on my leg for the last 2.5 years. And I've tried many different types of treatments, and sometimes it gets better, sometimes not. And what really started to change for me was not the idea of, okay, how do I get rid of the pain? But was to start treating the pain as an entity that was there and asking something of me. And it was no longer, what do I need to learn from it? It's, what do I need to offer it? And does the pain still come and go? Yes. But is my relationship to it different? Very
Okay.
much so.
Attachment is different to that pain.
Acceptance is different.
Acceptance, attachment, and also the acceptance and letting go of attachment are good starts. But I don't think they're the whole picture. It's also, can I learn to love the pain? There's this, do you know who Ram Dass is? Ram Dass was in the 1960s. He started off as a psychologist at Harvard, and he was a teacher. And him and Timothy Leary were both fired because they were starting to use psychedelics.
Okay.
That was the beginning of the psychedelic movement.
Okay. You said 60s, yes, okay.
Right, so this is in the 60s.
We heard something about psychedelics. Yeah.
And so Ram Dass, he was one of the first people to take people on trips with psychedelics. And then he went to visit India and he found a guru, and then he came back and he stopped using all psychedelics. And he would be talking and he would say, it's not that my neuroses or my anger didn't arise anymore. It would still come. But instead of believing it to be the truth, when the neuroses or the anger arose, he would say, my good friend anger, I haven't seen you in a while. Let's go and have a cup of coffee together.
Interesting. I recently, we started reading a book for our daughter about the emotions.
Okay.
And there are the friends in this book, right?
Yeah.
So yes, there are emotions. Emotions are there, like you said, right?
Yeah.
Anger. Okay. Make a friend over the anger.
Exactly. Hello, anger. What's happening? Tell me your story. What can I do for you today?
Coincidence.
So yeah.
Just sit and spend time together.
Yeah, that's the invitation, is sit and spend time. And you'll note, if we're going to talk about emotions, one of the most difficult things is not the emotion itself, it's the belief that the emotion won't end. It feels like it's always going to be there. Right? So, and especially as children, that's what we learn, is that I have this difficult emotion and there's no adult around to help me learn how to navigate this emotion. So I believe it's never going to end. And that's why we resist our emotions, because we feel that they're going to overwhelm us and they're going to destroy us. But if we're able to, as children, if our parents are able to sit with us and say, okay, you're angry, I see your anger. I'll sit with you during your anger. It's okay to be angry. As an adult, we won't be so afraid of our anger. So the invitation is more to sit with the emotion and allow it to be there than to try to avoid it.
Okay. It's very good advice.
Yeah. And as parents, that one of our main roles is to sit with the emotion of the child and just tell them it's okay to feel this.
It's challenging because we need to learn that.
That's the thing, is because we were never given that.
No.
But one of my beliefs is when we become parents, it's our second chance to learn what we didn't give what we weren't given, and to learn to give it to ourselves.
Okay.
So often when I'm with patients and we're working with this, and they have children, and they're saying, I'm having a difficult time dealing with my child's anger, for example. And anger is often the one that parents have the most difficulty dealing with. And after we've gone through some work and they recognize that little child in themselves that wasn't allowed to be angry, the invitation is, when you see your child in anger and you're sitting with them, take your child in one arm and take your personal little child in the other and sit with both of their angers. And that's how we can start to integrate it as a parent towards our children.
Good advice. Very good one. Yeah, and I believe this is changing with the parent. The generations right now. Of course, this is the fast-moving world, right? But I hope that more and more people, because we have the access to all of the people, right, and the internet and the information, will discover that we can stop and accept and feel the emotions.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Because we were never taught that. No one taught us.
The majority of us weren't taught that.
Yeah.
And let's also accept that even if we do this work now, our children are still going to have other work that they're going to need to do in
Well, of
themselves.
course.
No, so when my children were born, with the mother of my children, we used to make this joke, is every month we're going to put 100 Swiss francs, or however much it would be in Polish currency, into a bank account. But this isn't for their university, this isn't for their education. This is for them to be able to pay for a psychologist to fix all the bullshit that we created along the way.
Good. It's not cheap.
And knowing that we're going to mess up along the way and being okay with that, I think, is part of being a good parent.
Yeah. Acceptance of that.
Yeah.
We are not perfect and we will never be.
Yeah. And no matter how much work we do in ourselves, we might be breaking certain patterns, but we're also going to be creating other ones, and we need to be aware of that.
I wonder how we jump off from the ghost to the parenting advices.
And now it's a good time to connect those two subjects, like being a shitty parent, or like putting shit into the child's head, and the other subject that we start, like a hungry ghost. And there is a book, you know that book?
So you're going to, well, that book is a little bit different. That's more about addiction.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to start to talk about the idea of hungry ghost. And there is a book called In the Realm of
The Realm of Hungry Ghosts by Gabor Mate.
Yeah.
Mate, okay.
And what is your comment to that? Like to, fix those two things.
Well,
shitty emotions that we didn't handle with, hungry ghost, and addiction. And this is the real big issue in this world that we are living now.
Okay. Well, I think maybe the first thing is that as a society we have a tendency to focus on the addiction. So we'll talk about in North America and starting also in Europe, we have what we call the opioid crisis, right? Too many people taking opiates. And our focus is on the substance itself, or it might be on alcoholism, or right?
Yes, substance.
The substance.
Yeah.
And perhaps our focus is misguided there. It's not because often the majority of our addictions, whether they be in substance, behavior, right? Our phones are one of our greatest addictions at the moment. It's not so much what is the addiction, because the addiction in itself is our self-medication to a different problem. It's a way of avoiding pain. So the invitation is not to ask, how do we stop the addiction? It's to ask, why the pain? And that's what's going back to this idea of the hungry ghost, is that it's that hungry part of ourselves, that unintegrated emotional space that we're trying to avoid. And so we're feeding it with all of these addictions. And it behaves like a ghost because it's not being fed properly. But if we ask the question, why the pain, as opposed to why the medication, we're going to get closer to actually exploring with ourselves and with our patients what the root of it is. And then we can take that ghost from being a hungry ghost, from being something that is taking over us, to becoming a part of us that we feed from a conscious place as opposed to a compulsive place.
In a safe manner, we can
In a
feed
safe,
it.
yeah, in a safe manner. I would maybe challenge that it's not always going to be safe to properly nourish it, and to learn to be, it's okay to be unsafe. But to do that, we have to have safety in our emotions to be able to feel unsafe in the outside world.
No other way around it.
Yeah,
This is the way.
yeah, this is the way. And
Do
so,
you think is it possible for someone who is really addicted and stuck really in his addiction is just to sit one day and say, okay, I will try to do something for me, I will try to touch my emotions, my pain. From my point of view, it's rarely possible.
it is possible, but the person has to want to do it. So from now we can go into like the therapeutic point, the how do we deal with this as being on the therapist here. So a common statement that can be very liberating to a lot of patients is they say, I have an addiction of alcohol. I'm drinking every day and it's having difficulty in my life, it's creating these problems. One of the first things you can say is, thank God you found alcohol. Because without that, you would probably be dead. And know that you're using the alcohol as a way of self-medicating throughout the situation.
To survive.
To survive, exactly. So destigmatize, right? Take away the label that you're doing something bad. That's like one of the first ways of opening the person, saying, okay, so my alcohol is actually helping me. So then then we can start being, well, what's it helping me for? Why am I doing this? What's happening with me? And the entry point is always being curious about what's happening inside of me, not so much the external action. And as acupuncturists, if we have that approach and then we use acupuncture to reinforce that, not only is it a cerebral cognitive aspect, but there's also a body aspect. And that can start a whole movement towards choosing and being conscious in our choices of a more integrated life, and a wholer life.
It is interesting. It's interesting to ask this question yourself, right? Because it's not in line with what we hear, right?
Mm-hmm.
The addiction is bad, right?
Right.
But it's something else.
There's no good, there's no bad.
There's no good, there is no bad. This is the means to survive.
Yeah.
Yes, it can end badly, of course.
It can end badly, yeah.
And it often does, but it is a mean to survive.
Yeah, it's a means to survive. And so, as opposed to stigmatizing it as bad, we say, in psychological terms, you might say it's a maladaptive, right? So first, the behavior or the action or the substance is a way of adapting to a situation. Now, it might not be the best way to adapt to it, but you're doing your best to adapt.
Okay.
Right? And then what comes of that is then we can look at, so here's another statement that we can use. To be well adapted to an ill environment is to be ill ourselves.
Okay.
So, and if we look at our society, yes, there are a lot of problems with our society. Our society is not a healthy society. I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
No.
So, of course, we're going to have adaptations to that. Now, some of those adaptations are, if we haven't had help and an environment that supports us, we're going to find the easiest one or the one that works the best at that moment with the resources we have. And until we can question that, that's going to keep getting bigger and bigger until it becomes the addiction. So, often when I tell people who are working with addiction, it's like, well, thank God. It means that you're not accepting the world the way it is. So there's still some sanity left.
Interesting. Sorry for that.
Your idea is that we, using acupuncture, that we can create the space for a few minutes, few hours, few days, that someone that is really fucked with addiction can see beyond the addiction and look inside of themselves. That's
one part of it. So now with my system of acupuncture, the way in which I approach acupuncture, I look that there are two, let's say, different ways in which we can hug somebody. And sometimes that's what I think about acupuncture. When we're putting in needles, we are allowing the person to hug themselves. So one is about creating the structure. It means creating a vessel or a space to delineate, to say, this is the outside, this is the inside. This is the structure I need to be held by, that it's safe enough for me to feel. And so that would be my I Ching course, the one that we're doing tomorrow here. Is often about creating a structure in which is, or in alchemical terms, it's called sealing the vessel. Working with the vessel in which what can be held in, what is the part that is within me, what is the part that is without me, and being able to separate the two and have an interaction between the two, but with a structure. And then the second part of that is once we're being held is how do I work and move with what's happening inside of me? And the type of acupuncture that we can do is one is to invite the person to discover and to feel and to create their structure, their vessel. And then the second part is to, and there I often use something like the 4 needles, would be to help the movement within that structure, to help the alchemical change of moving from one place to another.
Okay.
And so that's how this all folds into the way as an acupuncturist is, I never feel like acupuncture or the needles I'm putting are going to heal the patient. And I know people hate it when you say that because we're healers.
But we are not.
But what we're doing is maybe we are inviting for a different approach for the body to relate to itself, to start its own healing process. And that's all we're doing, is we're just inviting with curiosity and compassion a way for the body to start to understand itself in a different way, to sort of step back and change its perception of how it's integrating. The mind also, and the emotions, the whole package is allowed to take a moment, reflect, and maybe change its perception of the world.
See it, yes.
I think that this is a good sentence for acupuncturist to sit with that sentence about healing, non-healing. And it's also a really good sentence for our clients, that this is not like a physiotherapist or something, that this is the intimate meeting with yourself, something like that.
Yeah, and what I would say is also there's no pressure that you have to come in thinking that I'm going to intimately know myself. You can also go and see an acupuncturist, or an acupuncturist can take patients who come in and say, I have a back pain. Say, okay, we're going to work with your back pain. We're not going to ignore the suffering in which you are. And as we work with the back pain, and that could be doing the points that will relieve the back pain, there's also the invitation then to open a dialogue with. So I wouldn't say that the patient has to come in ready to do the work. I think from the therapist's point of view is to be open and compassionate and curious enough that it creates an invitation for the patient. That maybe they'll do that maybe they'll be curious about it themselves.
Okay.
Okay, so I think this sentence is really good invitation to say goodbye.
Well, I would take it as an invitation to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Yes.